Welcome back to the channel. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. You're in for a treat tonight. We're doing a double header with the creamy, cheesy, raw vegan cashew Alfredo sauce that we're going to pour over some kelp noodles, garnish with some fresh chopped up Roma tomatoes and marinated mushrooms, just partially dehydrated. And then we're going to have a little blurb at the end for a very short but very delicious raw vegan cashew cream cheese recipe as well, so stick around for the end for that. So first things first, I did already start soaking my kelp noodles. We got these on Amazon. I think they're about $6 a pop, and I've got 2 packages soaking in this bowl, which is going to be enough for 3 servings. According to the serving size, actually 1 container contains 3 servings. So this is actually going to be a double serving of kelp noodles, but there's only 6 calories per serving. So these are basically just water. But these are really, really good with this recipe we have. But you could use any kind of noodle you want. You could use zucchini noodles or cucumber noodles or regular cooked food noodles. So next we're going to pull out the Vitamix and get this thing started. So you don't have to have the Vitamix. It's just my personal preference. I haven't tried any other high-speed blenders, but we've been using a Vitamix for probably 7 years now and absolutely love the Vitamix. So first thing we're going to do is measure out 1 cup of soaked cashews. You want to make sure that your nuts are soaked because it's a much easier digestion, and there's a whole book about all the reasons why, so you should read the book. I haven't. We get the halves and pieces of the cashews because when you buy them in bulk, they're way more affordable than the whole cashew. Again, I pre-soak all my nuts, and then after they soak, I dehydrate them and put them in the freezer so we have all our nuts ready to go. So a full cup, kind of heaping cup cashews in first, then we're going to add 1 cup of water. And then next we're going to chop up our lemon, and we're going to put the juice of 1 lemon in here as well. So go ahead and squeeze that in. This is going to make quite a bit of sauce as well. You could cut this recipe in half very easily if you didn't want to have as much, but it's really, really good. So the juice of 1 lemon. And then we're going to add, and again, you don't have to add nutritional yeast, but for the cheesy flavor, we're going to add 1 tablespoon of nutritional yeast as well. Again, this is not raw. This is a processed ingredient, optional as well. I know a lot of people are trying to avoid salt. You don't have to add salt, but it adds a whole lot, obviously, in terms of the flavor and the cheesiness as well. We're going to add 1 teaspoon. That seems like too much. I'm going to change it up. I think we're actually only going to add a half a teaspoon. Yeah, that's better. A half a teaspoon of salt. Okay, and then we're going to add 2 teaspoons of onion powder. You could add 2 teaspoons of garlic powder, or if you'd like, you can add 2 cloves of garlic as well. Either way works just fine. And then we're going to add an entire tablespoon of, 2 teaspoons of freeze-dried basil. Heaping teaspoons. And then if you didn't want to use salt, you could actually use organic celery in lieu of salt. This would work well to give it some of that salty flavor that you're looking for without actually having salt in here. Make sure it's organic though, because celery is on the Dirty Dozen. So once you get that in here, we are going to be adding some fresh rosemary as well, but we're going to wait until the very end and pulse that in after the sauce is heated up. So I'm going to run this Vitamix until I can feel that it's warm. Again, the noodles, kelp noodles are in warm water, and I put a 1/4 cup of baking soda in the water as well, which helps break down the noodles. And that's pretty warm water, about 115 degrees, so those noodles are actually pretty warm as well. So we're going to run this Vitamix until the sauce, or the Alfredo sauce is nice and warm. I'm going to keep my hands on the side of the blender, and then once it's warm, we're going to add in the fresh rosemary. All right, now it's just starting to get warmed up, so I'm actually going to add 1 soaked medjool date as well. Now dates are very, very sweet, and the idea is not to sweeten this sauce up, but to bring a balance by adding a sweet flavor. So 1 soaked medjool date. Again, we keep our dates soaked in the fridge. I usually soak about 12 ounces, 12 to 14 ounces at a time, and just keep them in the fridge for smoothies and recipes like this. And I'm also going to add just a tiny little bit of chili powder as well. Where did I put that? Here it is. Just a little tiny dash of chili powder to give it a little zip. The garlic will bring a little spice, but just a tiny little shake of chili powder also helps to just solidify all the different flavors together. Now again, this is just starting to warm up. The Vitamix has been going for right at 1 minute. That's another 45 seconds, and this is perfect. Yep, not too hot, just nice and warm. And again, we've got some fresh rosemary we just picked from out in our front yard garden. So I'm going to put that in here. You don't have to use any fresh herbs if you don't want. And as a matter of fact, I normally prefer fresh basil over the dried basil, but it just adds a lot of flavor. And so you just want to pulse this in. Okay, that was more than a pulse, but. All right, that's good. This isn't really thick, which is just fine, but it's looking really, really good. Another thing sometimes I do, if it's not quite as thick as I want it to be, is I'll go ahead and add in some hemp hearts, just to thicken it up a little bit. Right now I'm just using this spatula to kind of get all the pieces of rosemary that haven't gotten hit with the blades yet, just so we get that flavor in there all the way. And the reason I wait until the end and don't actually just completely pulverize the rosemary in there is because it does have a tendency to get just a tiny bit bitter if you just completely blend it in versus pulsing it. All right, so next I'm going to go ahead and drain the kelp noodles off, get all this water drained off of the kelp noodles. Those have been soaking for probably 30 minutes. You don't have to soak them for quite that long, but I like to give them a nice chance to warm up in the warm water. So you want to go ahead and get as much of the water out as possible, especially being that the sauce isn't as thick. So now we've drained off all that sauce, and we've got the kelp noodles here. And we can go ahead and pour our sauce right over the noodles. That's quite a bit of sauce, which is just fine. And I've made this same amount of sauce for actually 3 packages of kelp noodles, thinking that each one of us could have a package. But tonight we're going to be doing a salad as well, and also that was a bit too much for Mom and Angela. So they could probably split 1 package of these noodles with sauce, and I can eat all of 1. I could probably eat 2 or 3 packages. These are so good. But I have a tendency to kind of overeat if I'm not careful. So get as much of that sauce out of there as possible. I'm not even going to rinse this out before we whip up our cream cheese because it's using the same base of cashews for that cream cheese. So I'm just going to set that off to the side. You can see now I've poured the sauce right over the noodles. Now this is kind of messy, but the way I like to do it is just massage in the sauce with my hands. I did wash my hands before, so they're nice and clean. Once you get all that sauce in there, you can go ahead and plate the noodles. All right, next I'm going to go ahead and add some freshly chopped up organic Roma tomatoes. Again, you want to make sure those organic tomatoes, if possible, because those do appear on the Dirty Dozen. So this is just one organic Roma tomato. They look really, really good. Yes, I got them at Walmart. You can get your organic produce anywhere you want. Walmart, again, sells more organic produce than any retailer in the world. That doesn't mean they have the best, and it's probably not as good quality as some of the other places. My favorite place to go to is Sprouts, but we don't have one really that close. I think it's about an hour away. So we're going to put those fresh tomatoes on there. And next we're going to add some of those marinated mushrooms. Well, those have been in the dehydrator now for probably about 45 minutes, just warming them up. They were partially dehydrated after we marinated them to give it just a more dense texture. And I'll go grab those and put those on next. All right, now before I put the mushrooms on, I am going to take just a little bit of fresh black pepper and just crack that over top of the tomatoes. Adds a nice little flavor as well. And then we're going to take the mushrooms. Now these, because of the marinade, and we're going to have the recipe for these coming up next, along with the dressing for the salad, these add a lot of punch to the flavor. They're really, really good, but they're pretty strong. So we're not going to need too many, just a little bit. It's almost like a garnish, but they do add quite a bit of flavor and just like a nice denser type flavor to it. I know not everybody that's raw is digging the mushrooms. You can definitely forego the mushrooms. Hey, you could even forego the tomatoes. You don't have to have any of that. I just love the way that looks, love the way it smells, and love the way it tastes. It tastes so good. So before we eat this, we're actually going to be having a salad that I've prepared as well. And this is just a really simple romaine salad, but this is coming up next too. This is our spicy, smoky chipotle ranch, and it's a really, really good dressing. So the recipe for this is going to be coming up next. We're going to polish this off, and then I'm going to run through the cream cheese recipe. So be right back. All right, we just ate dinner. It was so good. Now we're going to pop through this very easy and quick cashew cream cheese recipe. Again, I'm not even going to rinse out the blender. Hopefully that doesn't mess up the probiotic. So we're going to take 2 full cups of cashews. This makes quite a bit. You could completely cut this in half if you wanted to. I like to do a big recipe though because I have the larger blender. My mom has the smaller one and the bigger one, so she can go a little bit less. So 2 cups of cashews, and then we're going to take 1 full teaspoon of salt. Put that in there. And then 2/3 of a cup of water. Put that in there. And I forgot to do this, but actually what I did last time worked out really well is just put the dry cashews in first and blend it up until you kind of pulverize those into a nice powder before they get to a butter, and then add your water. For some reason that makes a much smoother cream cheese than doing it this way. But go ahead and start blending those up. Okay, that's about 30 seconds, and I'm going to take my spatula and just kind of get everything pushed down to the bottom, because you get little tiny pieces of the cashews that get flung up onto the side and they stick, because that's just what they do when they get chopped up and wet. So we don't want that necessarily. I mean, a chunky cream cheese isn't horrible. It's still really, really good, especially if you're just going to be dipping crackers in it or vegetables or something like that. But for a smoother one, you can go ahead and again, just take the spatula, kind of knock it all down in there, maybe run it for another 15-20 seconds. All right, now it's nice and creamy and delicious. It's not very thick, but once you put it in the refrigerator, it'll thicken up. So now you take a glass bowl. I don't know if it has to be glass, but that was what my mom told me to do, and it's her recipe that she stole off somebody else, so that's what I'm doing. And you take your spatula and you just get all of it as you can out of the Vitamix pitcher here into your bowl. And I do see some chunks, which whatever, if you blend up your cashews before you get the water in there, I think you'll have less chunks, because that's what I did the last recipe and it worked out really, really good. But my daughter's been helping me finish this stuff off, so we're going through like an entire batch of cream cheese like almost every week, which is great. So this stuff's really, really good. All right, so once you get all that, I mean, you can't get all of it out just because of how thick it is, but once you get as much of that out as you can, you're going to go ahead and take your probiotic. And Mom was using, oh gosh, what's that stuff that she makes called, hon? That she makes like cheese with and stuff. I can't remember what she calls it. Anyway. Activated something? Yeah, it's something activated, you're right. But I went ahead and got this Life Biotic dietary supplement from Puradyne. Can't remember how much this was, but it wasn't too much. And it's got 56 servings in this one little tiny container, which is a lot. So it comes with it comes with this little tiny scoop. And what I've been doing is just taking one scoop, heaping, dumping it in there, and then one more scoop, heaping and dumping it in there. Since there's 2 cups of cashews, I figured 2 scoops is good. And I just put the lid back on. And once you get that in there, you want to go ahead and just stir it up and get all of that probiotic stirred into your cashew cheese here. And then you're just going to leave this on the counter loosely covered. So what I do is just take a plate that doesn't exactly sit flush on this, and I just set this on top, and you want to leave it on your counter for 24 hours. And what that'll do is it'll start to culture and get a nice cheesy flavor to it. And then after it does that, you can season it up. Now we've been doing where there's no seasonings at all, but what I'm going to do tomorrow night after this is nice and cultured is I'm going to add half of the juice of a lemon. So, or half of a lemon juice, half of a lemon juiced. Anyway, I think that'll add just a little tiny bit of zing to it, like a normal cream cheese has. But even without any seasonings at all, just a teaspoon of salt, and then you stick it in the fridge, and this will last for, you know, at least a couple weeks. But really, really, really good. Very clean, very basic, plant-based raw cream cheese recipe. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe so you get that chipotle, that smoky chipotle ranch recipe that's coming up next, and hit the notification bell so you get notified every single time we publish new content. Thanks again for watching.